The development or the underdevelopment that one gives to one's soul will determine whether that person will be a failure or a success, a champion or a loser, whether he will make heaven or end up in hell. Man's soul is as important as his spirit. The soul of man is the faculty of man that gives him self-consciousness or self-awareness. It is one of the invisible but real elements of man. The other of his invisible elements is the human spirit. The soul is not the spirit is not the soul either. A human being is a spirit that has a soul that lives in a body. This definition makes us to realize that man is composed of three elements, which are the spirit, the soul, and the body. This view is supported by the Bible. Man's soul is made up of three components, and they are the mind, the emotion, and the will. The mind itself is further composed of these three elements. They are the intellect, the memory, and the imagination. Now, the intellect. The intellect is that part of the mind that is responsible for critical and creative thinking, understanding concepts and ideas, as well as passing judgment. The intellect is one of man's greatest powers. Its capacity is immense. The powers of the intellect can be increased or decreased. It is increased by intentional and profitable study, reasonable skill acquisition, and constant cognitive exercise. Both unbelievers and believers have got intellect. Believers do not have more of it just because they are believers. Unbelievers do not have less or more of it just because they are unbelievers. Anybody, irrespective of their spiritual state, who develops and applies his intellect reasonably is bound to excel. This is why some of the most successful, most prosperous, and smartest people and countries in the world are unbelievers. Think about China and Japan, nations where Christianity is almost non-existent. The second element of the mind is the memory. What is the memory? The memory is the faculty of the soul that helps you store and recall information, facts, and figures. It is the seed for storing words and numbers as well. A good memory is one of the vital keys to a great life, both in secular and in spiritual things. Like the intellect, the human memory can be increased or decreased with use or a lack of it. A believer does not have a better, bigger, or greater memory just because he's a believer. An unbeliever, on the other hand, does not have a bigger or better or less memory just because he's an unbeliever. This is why many unbelievers who know how to memorize facts and figures have excelled by way of inventions and innovations, where many well-meaning and good but intellectually lazy, cognitively foolish, psychologically and philosophically bankrupt Christians have failed. Having come to this point, please, I'd like you to pause, subscribe, comment, then share the video later. This is why both believers and unbelievers will attend college or university, but the unbelievers will come tops in the class and clinch all the prestigious prizes. Why? Because they have mastered how to expand their memory. We thank God that it is not all losses. For the examples of men who developed their memory to a large extent and became great in life and for God can suffice. One of them was Didymus the blind. Just as his name implies, he was blind. He became blind when he was just 4 years, before he learned to read and write. By memorizing the Old Testament, and he could quote same with clarity and accuracy. Another was Robert Dick Wilson, who mastered 45 languages and who knew the Bible so well that he studied and read the New Testament syllable by syllable in the original Greek. Another was Watchman Nee, who was a Chinese pastor and one of the greatest Bible teachers the world has ever known. He was imprisoned by the Chinese government for 20 years. That was between 1952 to 1972, and later died in prison. Why was he imprisoned? Because he refused to deny Christ. Because they put the human memory to good use. You will not become great for God if you refuse to use your memory to the glory of God. How then do you increase the memory? You increase the human memory by steadfast study, clear memorization of scriptures and relevant materials, and the application of same. The third component of the mind that we are considering is the imagination. The imagination is the image making power of the soul. With the power of imagination backed up by practical action, you can create the future that you desire for yourself. With the power of imagination, deserts and arid lands have become paradises. Think of Dubai. The sick have become healed. Think of the woman with the issue of blood. She imagined her healing, took action, and became healed. If we can imagine what heaven looks like, going by what the Bible says, we shall cooperate with the Holy Spirit, consecrate our lives, live in holiness, and make that heaven. The imagination that is impregnated with action, holiness, and strategic prayers cannot be withstood by any contrary force. Why then do many believers live as failures? It is because they have a poor imagination, which is as a result of storing the wrong images, facts, and figures in the memory.